Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our class here this evening. This is Coach Communication 201, How to Build Relationships with College Coaches. We're going to be getting started here in just a couple of minutes. I see a few guys still signing in right now, so we're just going to give them a few more seconds here to get the audio connection as we get going. But while we're starting here tonight, just want to make everybody aware there is a feature to our class here this evening, so check it out if you haven't already. You can ask questions and type anything you need to through that chat box. So just to give it a quick test, just to make sure everything's working, go ahead and type in your sport and your graduation year into that chat box. Just want to see in the class with us here tonight. You don't need to type your name or anything. Just type in your sport and your graduation year into that chat box, and we'll get started here in just a minute. All right, I see a few of them coming in there. Perfect. So just to kind of introduce myself here a little bit, as we're getting started here with the class here tonight. My name is Jeff Smith, and I'm a head recruiting coach here at NCSA. I primarily work with our aquatic sports, so mostly swimming, diving, and water polo. I was a collegiate swimmer, swam for 4 years at Millikan University here in Decatur, Illinois, and then also got to coach then at Millikan after I graduated. So, spent a few years as an assistant coach right out of school. Also worked as a club and high school coach alongside of that, and then actually had a chance to take over the program there at Millikan and was named the head coach for 3 seasons before coming over here to NCSA last year. So, got a lot of experience on both sides of the recruiting process, having been through it as an athlete myself, and then also working with that process every day as a coach. So, really looking forward to working with you guys here tonight and just talking all about this next step here within coach communication. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with that here tonight. So why do we build a relationship with a coach? Okay, that's going to kind of be the essence of our class here tonight. And we talked a little bit first in the Coach Communications 101 class about that initial connection. Okay, how to send that first email, how to get the coaches to notice your profile, that sort of things. That's just going to be the kind of the beginning, the tip of the iceberg, within the communication process here, with that coach. Okay, so you send that initial email, that kind of opens it up to starting to get some profile views and follows. They start to send you some camp invites, questionnaires, that sort of thing. Where do we go from there? Once the coach has found you as a player, and they've figured out that you're going to be a good athletic fit, then you have to figure out a way to differentiate yourself from that group, okay? Because you're not going to be the only person that's a good fit, for that particular school. So we want to talk about how to stand out those recruits. So that's where the relationship building comes in. The better relationship that you build with that coach, the more that you're going to stand out to them, the more that they're going to be interested in you as a recruit, and the better chance that you're going to have of getting a roster opportunity and potentially a scholarship opportunity at that school as well. So the big things, and we're going to talk more about these as we go along here, but consistent communication, through emails, phone calls, visits, having multiple in-person interactions and evaluations are going to be the things that you really want to focus in on. And we're going to talk about all of those because, of course, our big thing here at NCSA is we want to help you to be the best recruit that you can be. So by doing that, we're going to prepare you to build the best relationships that you can with each coach that you are in contact with. Okay, there's some different levels of coach communication here within this process, and we're going to go through some of these things here. But it kind of starts off with camp invites, questionnaires, just generic type emails there. So that's what you might start to experience as an underclassman, or as you start to fill out questionnaires and you get on the mailing lists and things like that. That's going to be that initial level, and just about anybody can get that sort of contact, whether or not you actually might be a good fit for that particular school. But the next step up from there is starting to get personalized contact. Okay, we start to get personal responses from your emails. We start to get personalized text messages from those coaches, things like that. That's when we start to realize that there could be some actual interest there. The coaches are taking time to specifically communicate with you, and not just sending out one email to multiple hundreds of people on a mailing list. Then we kind of progress into consistent digital communication. Again, emails, text messages, maybe starts to be through social media then as well. We start to build up then to setting up some phone calls. And you're just getting more and more personal as we build up through these levels of communication. Then we start to talk about visits, both unofficial and official. As long as it's going to be that in-person personal contact, that's what we're really going for there. And then of course that all leads up to eventually getting an offer. Now whether that is an offer of a roster spot, an offer of a scholarship, or just saying, hey, we'll help you get admitted to the school, one another. That's kind of the end goal here of these different levels of coach communication throughout this process. So of course starting off just general camp invites, questionnaires, it's going to be your generic type of communication, the most generic. It's going to be a very common response to your introductory emails. You can also start to get some of these if you fill out a questionnaire, which those can be found here on NCSA. We can link you to those, or you can find them directly on the team's athletic website. For underclassmen, this is going to be a big one for you guys to focus in on, because it's a great way to just get yourself into their recruiting database one way or another. Get your name in there, get your contact information in there. Then we'll kind of drive them to see that you have a profile. They'll get to see more information here with us here at NCSA, things like that. So you start getting camp invites from that. Typically they're just going to send it out to anybody in their database. So they're not going to specify it too much unless they maybe make sure that they're only sending it to in-state people, or people that are close enough potentially to go to the camp, things like that. But they're not necessarily going to limit it by your ability level, and you might actually fit in with that particular school. Okay. Now camps can be beneficial for a number of different reasons, but you don't necessarily want to use a camp just to get noticed. Okay, you don't want to go to a specific school's camp if you really haven't had any sort of communication outside of just a camp invite with those coaches before. It's a great thing to do if you've already had that communication with the coach, and then you go there and you can get not only in-person instruction from that coaching staff, but you're being evaluated while you're there the whole time. So it's a great way to make a personal connection. It's a great way to get that extra level of notice and evaluation from the coach. But if you just go there and you're a name on their roster list, or you're a number out on the field, it's not necessarily going to be the best way just to get noticed. We want to really stress having some communication with them before that camp, or maybe you got a very personalized invitation to their camp, and then that's going to be a great way to kind of use those camps and leverage getting noticed, those coaches. Okay. Now, how persistent should we be throughout this contact? This is a question that we get a lot here. So I send my email out to my 25 target schools. Now what do I do, coach? Okay. So an average response rate from these coaches, really guys, it's going to be fairly low. It's going to be about 15 to 20%, and that's going to be if you send a really strong email and if we targeted the right types of schools. Okay, so again, you expect to get that generic response, camp invitation, especially if you're a Division I or Division II, contact there, and you're an underclassman. That's the only kind of response that they can send. So you don't expect necessarily anything more than that. Now, if you're an upperclassman, or potentially if you're an underclassman that's emailing D3 or NAIA, of course you get that response from them. If you're going to be an upperclassman, you're reaching out to Division I and Division II, and they're allowed to contact you back. Then we want to look for that personal response. Okay, hopefully we get that from that coach. Hopefully they're responding to some of the questions that you asked. You use some additional information, things like that. So that's going to be, the hope is that we get that initial response from that email. But in 50 to 20%, that means we're looking at anywhere from 80 to 85% of these schools aren't going to be responding. So what do you do then? If that coach does not respond to that first email, that's okay. It's going to happen. Wait a couple of weeks and try another introduction. Mostly the same email, but mention that maybe you reached out before. You understand it's a busy schedule for them. You just want to get reintroduced, things like that. So we don't want to send the exact same email, but it can contain a lot of the same information. And if you feel that the school is really going to be the right fit for you, it's right at the top of your list, you can try calling them and leaving them a voicemail. I typically will almost always recommend it's going to be the best case scenario if you can establish contact through email first before before you just try and make a phone call, okay? Because if the coach does answer, if you do have a little bit of a conversation, it might feel really good for you, but it's not necessarily going to be, a great way to get your information to that coach, okay? They want to see it, on paper. They want to see it on their computer screen. They want to digest that information a little bit before they really spend the specific time and effort going through a personal phone conversation there with you as a recruit. Okay. Now, if you've sent a couple of emails, if you've tried a phone call, it might just be that we need to wait a season. We need to wait till we get some new video footage. We need to wait till we get some updated stats or times or things like that, and you then try reaching out again. Okay, it's not the end of the road. You certainly you can reach out to them again in the future, but we don't want to be sending them 5 to 10 emails in a 2-month stretch and wondering why we're not hearing back, because then you get to a point where you're just kind of bugging them or badgering them, and they're not going to want to respond even if they do see your email and if you are a good fit, because they just kind of get annoyed by it at that point. So we want to be persistent, but we don't want to go overboard with that. So then, as we build up to some personalized emails and text messages and things like that, again, we want to understand the recruiting timeline and the communication rules, and just know when these coaches are allowed to respond to you. Okay, because as a student athlete, there's no rule against you reaching out to a coach in any way, shape, or form at any time. Okay, you can reach out to them. The rules are in place to restrict them in how they can respond to you or how they can reach out to you. Okay, so Division I coaches, they cannot have personalized contact before September 1st of your junior year. Okay, Division II coaches can't have that personalized contact before the summer in between your sophomore and junior year. Okay. Now, for Division III, for NAI, they can have contact with you. There's no restrictions there in terms of your age and things like that. However, most Division III and NAI coaches won't get all that specific or personalized in the recruiting process until you are an upperclassman, just because so many things can change. You might be reaching out to them and just knowing that they're the only ones that can respond, but maybe you kind of leave them behind once you figure out you're a junior and you can get bigger and better things. They're just not going to spend all that much time and effort on it. Back and forth with you a couple of times. They might have a conversation here or there, but the real bulk of this communication and the bulk of the personalized communication is going to take place when you are an upperclassman. It's a good thing to get a head start on it, get introduced, everything like that while you are an upperclassman, but they will primarily be taking place as an upperclassman. Now, for the underclassmen that are just going to be those stud recruits, the no doubters, the ones that D1 coaches are going to be scrambling over, even though they can't necessarily send you that personal email, text messages, things like that, they can reach out through your club coaches. You can be contacting them through phone calls, things like that. There are some loopholes. If those coaches want to get a hold of you, they'll figure out a way to do that, but don't just assume that you are that level of athlete or that you will get that level of contact. Don't be the one to be reaching out to the coaches that much at that point. If that's good, you'll be able to find you through these different routes reaching out to you. Okay, if they're not reaching out to you, don't panic. It's okay. You're just going to be like 99% of all of the recruits that are out there. It's okay. We have a process here. The rules are in place to kind of protect you guys and make the recruiting process as easy as possible, and not overwhelm you at all. So we're here to help you out through that whole process and just make sure you understand everything as well. Okay, so then as we've gotten to that personal contact, then it's going to progress to consistent digital communication. So this is typically going to take place again, once you're an upperclassman, and there's no restrictions on the amount of this type of contact that you can have from any of these coaches. Okay, so how do you continue this conversation? How do you want to continue sending them updates or asking questions, things like that? Anytime you post a new video or you have a big update on your season, whether you did something, your team did something, maybe you got some new staff, things like that. Those are good things to send out as updates. If your season schedule comes out, or if you see that you have a couple of dates where you're going to be really close to that coach, that's a good reason too. If you're trying to set up a phone call, set up a visit, with that coach, with that school, those are good reasons to reach out as well. So basically, anytime that you have some sort of significant update, some sort of significant question, or you're trying to your level of contact with that coach, it's going to be a good reason to reach out. Now, do you need to be reaching out every week? No. Do you need to be reaching out every other week? Probably not. But if you're, say as a junior, if you're trying to maintain contact with these coaches at least once a month, you're going to be in a pretty good position there. Once you're a senior, then we might be, to the point where it's every 3 weeks or so. Especially once we get into the offers and the applications and things like that, it's going to be pretty frequent then. But before then, once a month is going to be just fine. Now, if the coach is truly interested in you, they're not just going to be responding to your contact, but they're going to be initiating it on their end as well. Both text messages, emails. They might be proactively inviting you to come out to campus or things like that, and they're going to respond to you in a rather timely fashion as well. Okay? So you'll get that feel from the coaches. If it's going back and forth, if it's feeling good, if you're having consistent contact there, it's not just you initiating it, but it's the coaches initiating it as well. And then you're going to feel, like you're in a really strong position at that point, which you would be, if you're having that level of contact. Okay. So now the next big one is going to be phone calls. This is when it really starts to become a serious personal connection here with these coaches. Okay, anybody can send emails and text messages back and forth, but once you get them on the phone, then we're starting to get pretty serious here. Okay, so now we talked about a little bit, the big time Division I recruiting. If they're coming after you as an underclassman, phone calls are going to be the way that they do that. So, if you're going to play Division I, if you're going to play big time Division I, it's most likely that you'll have a call before that contact period starts on September 1st. How do they do that? They can call your club coaches, they can call your high school coaches, and request that you call them back. They can just give you some generic office hours where you can call in and things like that. They can't specifically call you, they can't specifically solicit you to call them, but they can say, if you ever call us, here's our office number, here's our typical office hours, things like that. Maybe send them a text or an email beforehand so they know to expect your call. That. So if you do that, make sure you of course, give them your name, give them your day and time that you're going to be calling, the number you're going to be calling from, and send them your NCSA profile as well so that they can take a look at that. They can have it pulled up, before those calls. Now, of course, there's all kinds of different things that we can talk about with these phone calls, but we actually have a recruiting class specifically for that. It's the next class in our Coach Communication series, CoachCom 301. So definitely be sure to get signed up for that as your next class here within the selection that you can go through within NCSA University there. So things to expect on your first phone calls here. Coaches are going to be asking you things. Basically, they want to get to know you. Okay, have that 30 to 60 second sort of elevator response. Kind of ready to go. Who you are, where you're from. Some of your top things that they need to know. Top grades. Positions that you play. Some of your top stats, things like that. They're going to ask about what some of your strengths and weaknesses are. What you're doing to further develop those things. How you're going about your day to day in practice or in the weight room or things like that. They're going to ask about some of your goals, athletically and academically, throughout the rest of high school, and then of course into college as well. And they're going to want to know what you're looking for, in a school or in a team, and that's going to help kind of shape how they present their team and their school to you a little bit. But genuinely, they want to know because everybody's answer is going to be a little bit different, for that. Now, some things that you should be asking, you want to know what they're looking for. Your position, what you need to do in order to qualify athletically there, what improvements you can be making if they've seen your video or if they've seen you play in person. They want to know, or you want to know if you are planning to study a specific major at that school, how others on the team have done with that in the past, or how many of that current major do they have on the team at the time. You also maybe want to know how many recruits they're planning to bring in with your graduation class. And you can specifically ask about your position as well, but just in general, you're going to be competing, among, 100 people for 10 spots. You're going to be competing for 15 spots, or maybe only 5 spots available. What do you have to do to kind of differentiate yourself there? It's okay to ask about some scholarship money. Now, you don't want to ask specifically how much money is going to be there for you, but it's okay to ask if they offer athletic scholarships, what their criteria is for that. You can ask about, general financial aid from the school, things like that. Avoid talking specifically to the coach about how much scholarship money can you give me. Okay, we don't want to do that. That's a great way to get a coach to not want to talk to you ever again and cross you off the recruiting list. Okay, so potentially steer clear of that conversation entirely. But if you go there, keep it generalized. Ask what you need to do to qualify for a scholarship. Maybe ask how much they're planning to give out in total. But you want to get much more specific than that. If the coach answers more specific, that's okay. But you don't want to necessarily ask or give off the impression that you're going to be just making a decision all about the money. Okay. The big thing that you always want to end any conversation with the coach, in person, on the phone, or even with emails. What are the next steps that I need to take in order to continue being recruited by you? Okay. Now that answer is going to change, depending on where you are in the process here, and in terms of what your next steps are going to be. So it's also going to change, by coach, by school. So you always want to ask that. The end of every conversation should be, what are the next steps that I need to take in order to continue this recruitment process here with you? Okay. Then we're going to be progressing to on-campus visits. So again, we're going to kind of touch the highlights here, but we've got another class that's set up specifically for these visits. So definitely check out our Coach Com 401 class, 401 there. It's going to be all about on-campus visits here. Two main types of visits. There's going to be your unofficial visits and your official visits. The biggest single difference between the two is who's paying for what. Okay. An official visit, the school has the opportunity, or the coach and the team have the opportunity to pay for some or all of your expenses in your relation to this visit. Now, just because they have the ability to do, or the option to do so, does not mean they have the ability to do so, does not mean that they are going to pay for your expenses, okay? So don't necessarily just expect it. The coach should be able to give you a detailed breakdown of what they're going to be covering and what, if anything, you will need to cover there as well. But because there is some money involved, there are going to be some restrictions on these official visits. Okay, unofficial visits, there's very little restrictions on them because there's no money involved. Coming to you as an athlete, family takes care of these expenses, both for your travel and everything else. Those are kind of some of the big differences. Now, what you do on an official visit versus an unofficial visit, pretty much the same things. Typically, you're not going to stay on campus for an unofficial visit. You're not going to do an overnight stay or anything like that. It's possible, but typically that doesn't happen. A lot of times these are just going to be your opportunities to get introduced to the campus, maybe meet some people on the team, meet the coaching staff, that sort of thing. Maybe you're there to check out a competition. Maybe a junior visit day, general campus visit day, things like that. For unofficials, you can go on as many of these as you want. You can go to as many schools as you want. You can visit one school as many times as you want. So this is an important thing, both as you're starting off the process, and then also, if you're on the the underclassmen side of things, to get noticed and get recruited by some of those higher level schools as well. Okay, your official visit, you only are going to get, no matter what level, you're only going to get one official visit per school. And at the Division I level, you can only go on 5 total official visits. Okay, D2, D3, you can go on an unlimited number of them, but it's still just one per school. Now, the big thing here is that you will be invited by the coach specifically for an official visit. And these also cannot take place most of the time your senior year. Some sports can start in your junior year, but typically you're going to see them occur during the fall of your senior year. Okay? These are going to be most likely reserved for players that the coaches are strongly considering for spots, for scholarship offers, things like that. Basically, guys, think about it from the coach's perspective. They're not going to spend a whole lot of money to bring in a recruit that they don't necessarily want on their team. So if you get an official visit invitation, that is a almost surefire sign that you are within the top 10 to 15 recruits that coach is considering. So it's definitely a really strong indication of the coach's interest. It's a great way for you to be able to really get a first-person experience of that campus. Typically, you get to sit in on some classes. You're going to stay overnight. You might get to watch a practice or kind of get the on-field game day experience with the team, things like that. So both of these are very valuable tools. The recruiting process, they're great ways to build the relationship with these coaches, because these are going to be your primary in-person interactions. Okay, you're building a relationship not just with the coach, but with a lot of different people that you get to meet while you are there on that particular campus. Then, the kind of the pinnacle step here, the reason that we're going through this whole process is potentially then, getting that offer and getting to go through the signing day process. So now there are some sports out there, and I personally consider these to be on the crazy side of things, but there's some sports and some elite prospects that can start to get offers as early as 8th grade or freshman year. Okay. It happens. It's not going to happen for everybody. Again, we're talking about the not even the 1% of athletes that are out there, they're going to qualify for this. So if you're in freshman year, if you're in sophomore year, you haven't gotten an offer yet, don't panic, okay? Not everybody does that. Those might be the ones that are talked about on ESPN, or things like that, but, it's not going to be that way for everybody. Okay. Now, there are some other things that you kind of need to think about. Typically for women's sports, they tend to be a little bit faster in the offer through the recruiting process here. Most Division I sports will have an offer out there on the women's side by the end of your junior year. Now on the men's side, it tends to be a little bit slower. A lot of it's just due to physical development and things like that. So it's not to say that you can have an offer before the end of your junior year, but sometimes the coaches will wait a little bit more. They might wait until closer to your senior year, or even once you start your senior year, with that. Now, as far as accepting an offer or committing, things like that, you will, in all likelihood, you'll verbally commit to a school first. This is going to be before you can sign your national letter of intent, because you can only sign that letter during these specific signing periods that are available to you. Okay. For Division I and Division II, there are several different signing periods that you can be aware of. So for all sports outside of football, okay, all sports outside of football, there's going to be an early signing period that starts in November. It's usually about the second week of November that they'll go through that. Now, for football and also for soccer and men's water polo, the regular signing period is going to start in February. Now, for you football players that are in here, that they are working on changing that legislation. They're working on adding an early signing period for football. But for right now, the February one is the one that you need to be aware of there. And then for all of the different sports, the regular signing period then starts in April as well. Okay. So now you'll get some more specific information there for your specific sport as you go through and meet with your head recruiting coaches and talk about those. But those are some of the general dates that you need to be aware of for that. You're going to verbally accept, at any point, basically once the coach makes an offer, but then you have to just wait for those time periods to actually formally sign your letter of intent. Okay, you can only sign a letter of intent during your senior year as well. So even if you get an offer, as an underclassman, you're not signing on the dotted line until you are a senior. Okay. For NAIA in Division III, there are no scholarship dates or signing period dates or anything like that. So that for the NAIA, you can sign your letter of intent at any time. For Division III, it's a little bit different. Now, there's no athletic scholarships there, so there's not an actual national letter of intent, but they do have what's called a celebratory signing form. So essentially, you can still participate in signing day. You still get an official document that you can sign from the school, but it's just not a binding thing, and it doesn't have anything to do with an athletic scholarship as well. Okay, so that's basically building up the relationship there through the different parts of the communication process with these coaches. Obviously, like we talked about, for phone calls, for visits, check out Coach Communication 301 and 401. For more detailed instruction, and if you want to talk through your personal game plan, of course, make sure to set up a meeting with your head recruiting coach. Reach out to our recruiting coach team if you need some help doing that as well. So, thanks guys for attending our class here tonight. I am going to send out this recording here shortly. So, but for right now, I'm going to stick around and answer any questions maybe that you guys have, from our class here tonight. So, if you do have some questions, just go ahead and start typing them into the chat box there. If you don't have any questions, feel free to go ahead and log off as the class has concluded. And again, like I said, I'll send out the recording here, in just a little while this evening. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to just go ahead and type those in, to the chat box, and we'll go from there. Question here for Division I. Can coaches talk to a player throughout their junior and senior year, or is there a cutoff date? Now, in general, yeah, they can continue talking to you. They can continue your recruiting process throughout the entire time there. There are going to be some dead periods. There's going to be some contact restrictive periods there. Now, those change based on what sport you're in. They vary quite a bit there. So definitely want to have that conversation specifically with your head recruiting coach to go over your specific sport, because rules do vary quite widely from sport to sport. But in general, outside of those periods, yes, you can talk to a coach, or the coach can talk to you throughout your junior and senior year. Other questions here? More minutes. We'll stick around here. Good question. So if you are offered a walk-on position, is there also a way to ask about the program's history of potentially then awarding a scholarship to athletes that are walk-ons? So basically, if you walk onto the team, if you're a non-scholarship athlete as a freshman, is it possible for you to get a scholarship offer as a sophomore, as an upperclassman, things like that? Yeah, so basically the way that you'd want to do that, you ask the coach and say, yeah, coach, I'd be, I'm really excited about being a part of the team. I think, I'd love to, accept a walk-on position here to the team. One thing that, I just wanted to ask you, is there a chance, potentially down the line that I could earn my way up, to being a scholarship member of the team? If so, what typically has to be done for that to happen? I mean, what do I have to do? What standards do I maybe have to meet as an athlete to have that as a possibility? And just talk through it with them. And most of them will be happy to talk with you about it. The big thing that they'll all say is that there's no guarantee of it, but that you might be able to do things X, Y, and Z throughout that freshman year in order to potentially be considered for a scholarship then in year 2, 3, or 4 with that program. So just asking the coach, and there's no real perfect way to phrase the question or anything like that, but just if you're being polite and honest with the coach, and you just basically stating that you're asking the question, you're going to be okay. All right. So if I'm a junior and my season hasn't started just yet, what other research should I be doing in the meantime? So that's a great question. You definitely want to be looking at the schools, look at their program history from the previous years, see what times they have, or what stats they have on their team, things like that. And you'll go to research the schools. That's when you do want to be doing that research process. And really, if their season hasn't started yet, that's a good time to be contacting those coaches as well, because when they're in season, they're going to have a lot less time to devote to their recruiting, just because they have a lot of other things going on. So if you're in the off season for your particular sport, as well as the off season of the college sport, it's a good time to actually be reaching out to those coaches then as well. All right, guys, we are going to go ahead and wrap things up here tonight. So if you do have any other questions, of course, feel free to reach out to our recruiting coach team, reach out to your head recruiting coaches, with any sport-specific questions that you do have. So thanks again for coming in here tonight, and hope you're able to learn some things, and wish you the best of luck here within the rest of your recruiting process. So have a good rest of the night.